1, 2, ready, and...
Hello and welcome to Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. By and for school administrators, this podcast is intended to promote candid discussion and insight about our great profession. My name is Rick Sola, and as Communications Director for the Kansas Principals Association, I am the host, but I am certainly not the feature. Sit back, take a sip, and enjoy. This is Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. Let's get started. Hello, Cool Coffee listeners. I hope this podcast finds you well and moving along just swimmingly as the 25-26 school year is now firmly underway. I'm excited to be joined here today by Mr. Nicholas Owen, principal of Saline High School, USD 306, KPA Region 5 in Gypsum, Kansas. Welcome, Nicholas.
Wow, I appreciate it. Man, you taught me some things about that. I didn't even know the different districts and everything else, so appreciate the knowledge.
So I didn't adjust my intro too much, but we were just talking about Saline High School, and I was asking about the vernacular of, because I know you're really close to Salina. Is it southeast of Saline? I've seen that. Let's start with that. Can you just kind of explain, how you would introduce yourself and kind of the vernacular of your high school that you're at?
Sure. I mean, generally I introduce ourselves as, I'm southeast of Saline. I'm right outside of Salina because nobody knows where southeast Saline is. We're basically located in a field right off of K4 Highway. We are one of those schools that the bonus is if you follow all that funding talk, we get funded for everyone because nobody's close to us. So we bust them all. So we're basically housed in the field. We have cows on one side of us. So we do have some space, and it's nice in that way. Like, we're one of the few schools that have an actual cross-country course on our campus because you have the space, you have the room to be able to do stuff like that. So technically, the closest town to us is Gypsum. It's a pretty small town, and that's just kind of up the road about 3 miles or so. We serve Gypsum. We serve Assyria, which is another town just kind of down the road. We're kind of located between them. Assyria is probably about 7-8 miles away. We also have some other tiny towns of like Kip, and then just we have like anything. We have a lot of students that come out of district from Salina who don't want to go in the larger schools. But yeah, it's funny because people are not used to Kansas. We'll always say Salina, and we're like, no, it's Salina, and then they'll be like, oh, so it's southeast of. Like I said, it's so Saline and Salina. It's doesn't make a lot of sense, but I guess you can always tell who the people who are not from the area are.
I was gonna say, who's local and who's not. So, how big is the high school you're at? How many students?
Man, we just talked about that. Our high school wise, we have 217. We have 98 in the junior high as well. So we're usually right around the 600 to 700 range. We are also kind of unique in the fact that we're a K-12 building. So everybody, I mean, that's to me, that's the joy. I know not everybody might enjoy that, but I have a young one too. So it's pretty awesome that, we're able to go to school every day and I'm able to see her and do certain things that I don't think, other people in other schools maybe aren't able to do. I don't have to miss her parties because they're in the same building. I can walk down and peek in on her classroom and things like that. So we are a K-12 building too.
Oh, very good. So, you're sitting there as principal here of the high school. Talk about your road to that chair, what you did prior, and what led you to where you're at today.
You bet. So I spent 15 years, once I got into education, I kind of went a different route for a little while, but once I got into education, I spent 15 years in the classroom as like a teacher, coach. I was head soccer coach, and I was head speech forensics coach at Salina Central High School, a 5A school. And the story basically goes, I was getting my, they had a leadership program, so I was getting my master's degree. And the only reason I was getting that was my wife convinced me to do it so we could move up on the salary scale. And I was like, all right, fine. But like anything, I learned a little bit about, communication and differences between, at least my relationship between me and my wife, the way we communicate. And one day she came home and said, hey, I can't work in this district forever. And I, stupidly, as a dumb man, took that as, oh, I better look for other jobs. So I opened it up and applied for another job. And actually got an interview right away. And, once I went through that interview process and everything, she looked at me, she goes, I was meaning like someday, not like now. And I'm like, well, here we go. So I applied and got a job at Solomon, which is about 13 miles from Salina, headed to the east along I-70, so closer towards you. I went there for 6 years as their 712 principal, and then that evolved into principal and athletic director. And so I did that for 6 years, and then this opportunity came up, and we thought it was a good move for me and my family. And so I've really been in this area of Salina my entire career. So I'm on year 3 at Southeast Saline. So, we're in year 24 of education, and I really haven't left, a 15-mile radius. So that's kind of been my little journey of education.
No, that's great. And, I always find interesting everybody's road. And sometimes we're not on the admin track or
Right.
even think about it at the
Yeah.
start of our careers. And then here we are. And so, no, thank you for sharing that. So we record, this is a August 26th recording. So we have started the school year. We're underway. But I know that the start of the year brings a lot of intentionality, and I know you had some intentionality at the start of your year, and I learned because we have a mutual connection with that intentionality with Mr. Don Epps, who came out to your school, and I think he was with you a day or two before he came out where I'm at. But I wanted to hear about your kind of the start of the year, but the intentionality behind that, everything that even includes Mr. Epps joining you.
You bet. So obviously, that's kind of been a focus in the last few years of what we wanted as far as really listening to our teachers in regards to their PD. We did a lot of some of the teachers get to choose their own, which is one of the things I think is a little unique. We always basically one day of the summer they dedicate to a day of their own PD, so we come back a day later than with some of the other area schools because they're doing a day of PD on their own, because the reality that we knew was they're learning and doing stuff in the summer anyway, whether that's books they're reading, whether that's other plans that they're doing, listening and talking to other people. So we're like, let's just grant them a day of PD for that. And then we've really been I guess you would say intentional in the fact of like getting the information from our PDC and just having them kind of take the lead on it. I think before it was very admin driven, like this is what the PD is going to be, and we wanted that to be really teacher driven. So we really focused a little bit more about making sure we're getting surveys, making sure our PDC leaders are the ones that are driving this, not coming from admin. And the thing that we heard over and over again was we really would like to have a motivational speaker. We really like to have a motivational speaker. And you know how that is. It's like, that's a great thought, but we're not a big district. We're not going to bring in a $10,000-$20,000 motivational speaker. And then when you're financially looking at it from an admin perspective, you're like, I don't know, can we really justify this for an hour or whatever the case may be? Like, yeah, it's going to get everyone excited, but is it really going to last throughout? So we started really having those discussions, and it's been in the back burner. Last year, we brought in a friend of mine who's a local administrator to kind of give that kind of feel, and that was positive. But I was at, I don't even remember. I was doing the bold leadership. That's what it was. I was doing the bold leadership, and we were actually at Pleasanton. And one thing leads to another, we're out to dinner, and I'm talking with Don, and he talks about wanting to do this, thing. And I said, if you ever do it, I said, put Southeast Saline on first. We're going to do it. He goes, all right, brother. I'm going to be there. You know how Don is. And yeah. We forgot about it. And then probably about a month or two later, he announced out on his social media that, he was going to do it. And reached out to him again. And he's like, I'm going to be there. We're going to be there. So we made sure we worked all the details out. He came out. He got everybody fired up. He don't have to come out and give a speech to get people fired up. He can call you on the phone. He can catch you passing by. He's just one of those guys who's infectious. He loves kids. He loves public education. And, he was a good way for us or, anyone to kind of get started. So he came out here. I also talked to a few of my local schools because he was already coming out here, and asked them if, they wanted him to come over. And so while he was out, he was able to go over to Minneapolis, and which is 30 miles down the road, and Concordia, which is about 45, 60 miles down the road. So he was able to come out and do some of our local schools. And like I said, he's a champ. He's Pretty awesome guy.
Well, he was on the tour for sure because he left here where I'm at and had to drive past Wichita. He even told me, I don't know, I must have blacked out. I don't know how I made it there on time, but he got wherever he was, Clearwater maybe. But he got out there and
Clearwater, Riverside. I don't remember which one it was, but it was one of those. I remember him telling me, he's like, only in the way Don was, is he was like, well, there's a local guy, I think he's going to fly me in his plane. And then he says, well, I don't know because he just called me and said the plane's broken, but maybe he'll get it fixed in time. I looked at Don and I was like, if the plane's broken, I don't think I'd take that risk, buddy. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's. I told him. I said, I'm glad you figured that out before you were in midair. I mean, that's that's a bad deal. No, first of all, so I remember he had already been with you, and he came out. I was like, Rick, you got to have Nick Owen on your show and blah blah blah. But that was great, and I'm really excited to have you on because at USA, I did a little presentation on podcasting in general, but also talked about Cool Coffee and had a survey for other administrators to just recommend different people for the show. Your name came up multiple times on that survey, and so I think it's awesome, and I appreciate you being on here today. So you mentioned that, and I really like that that kind of dedicated PD day for staff over the summer. Yeah. And the assumption is, like all of our teachers do, they are doing things throughout the summer. Is there anything that's like, I guess, a follow-up to that? Like once you start, like, hey, kind of a share out what you did, or I hate to use the word accountability, but more of a, like, I'd be really interested to know, everybody's kind of, whether you read a book or you found an article or you're doing something to implement into your classroom for the first time this year. What does that look like when they return?
Well, it's just like what you said. A lot of them, to be honest with you, it might just be a book study that they kind of lead. So we had a group that this year, the popular book now is That Anxious Generation. They kind of just ran with that, and they had they basically had probably monthly sessions. I'd say 3 or 4 sessions throughout the summer, where they would read, however many chapters, and they get together. And so obviously, when they met back, they discussed that. We have others that. We're a small school, so what this does is it gives them a little bit of flexibility. So they may not have a lot of time when they report things back. Let's say my band instructor goes and visits some college, university, and sees how they do their, band, or talks with another, professional. But they'll meet with me. One of the things I started when I got here was we basically I make teachers create their, very similar as they're seeing PDC goals, but I just tell them I want whatever their 3 goals are for the year. Create whatever their 3 goals, and then I want to meet with them. And we meet whether they're on evaluation or not. When I first got here, it was like, well, these are the set teachers you're going to have to meet with. And I was like, what about all the others? And they're like, well, there's no scheduled time you have to if you want to. I'm like, well, I need to know what they need from me is more than anything. I need to know what they need from me, and then we can hold each other accountable. So I kind of went over, every year I always tell my staff, here are my goals for the year. So that you can hold me accountable if I'm not doing that. And the same thing. And I don't feel like it's a gotcha or a catcha, and I don't think my staff does either. It's just, being professional and making sure we're all holding each other accountable. And, so we meet at the beginning and they kind of tell me about what their PD was over the summer, how they're going to apply it. Or, sometimes just like anything, you try something new and it was a bust. And so we know that. And it's just that. You want to make the staff make sure, I always tell them I want them to feel safe enough to fail. And so same thing we tell our kids and stuff like that. Try something new. If it was a bust, it was a bust, and we'll move on. But, give them that comfort, and then that's kind of how we roll with that.
I really like that quote, safe enough to fail. And I imagine, over the time, staff start to kind of they feel that comfort level. But going back to like when you started and establishing a new relationship with the staff, how are you? I guess going back to that intentionality, how are you intentional about establishing a safe to fail culture? Like, hey, because I always kind of have to remind myself that, especially with maybe newer educators or those new to the building, some people get a little tense. It's like, oh, that's the principal. And it's like, hey, it's okay to fail. I would encourage that. Sometimes you hear the saying, "You're not failing, you're not learning," or right. Something like that. But how do you really kind of emphasize that to staff? Like, hey, it really is okay. We want you to try.
Well, probably. I mean, just I guess observation, because they probably see me failing a lot. No, but I think the biggest thing is it's communicating. I try and obviously I guess I'm a storyteller in some ways, and I always try and tell them stories of where I've walked into classrooms and it has been a fail, and how in some ways this is just an opportunity for us to learn and grow. Being visible, being in their classrooms. That way they, you can see things. And when you see something, making sure it's not just you're passing through and I'm filling out evaluation, but like when I see something really cool or something different, I'm making sure that I'm writing them a little note. And I'm a big person on like handwritten notes, even though I have the worst handwriting ever. I think it matters, especially it's real easy nowadays where, an email can just get passed through and deleted because we get so darn many of them. So I try and get like a little note. And it's funny because when you walk through the classroom sometimes, I got one veteran teacher. This is his 41st year teaching all in the same building. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about feeling like, I don't know, I guess the best way to say is that what you're doing matters. Is like I walked in his classroom and one of the notes I gave him was like hung up on his board. Like it truly mattered to him. You know what I mean? Like something sometimes we think no big deal about, like, whatever. I just wanted to make sure he knew that, I liked what this was happening and things he was doing. And those things matter to them. I mean, there's some, don't get me wrong, just like anyone, just like kids, there's probably some that wad it up and toss it away right away.
Yeah.
And that's fine too. It still sent the message. But I think making sure when you see something like that, when you see they're trying something new, whether it's good or it's bad, embracing that. And like I said, sometimes when it does fail, I think the same thing. Instead of making sure we focus on and being like, ooh, that was bad, be like, you can still say that. You're like, hey, I can see that didn't work, but hey, I appreciate you trying it. That's the only way we grow is trying new things. So embracing that concept.
What a great way to frame maybe a busted lesson or something, as an encouraging way to, keep going, keep trying. Let me know how I can help. And you kind of capture something that I feel like it's just the story of education. The little things that you wrote that note and it's posted there on the wall. You probably totally forgot about the note at some point. You wrote it, and but you just don't know the interactions you have with everybody from students to staff to parents. Every interaction matters, and
yes.
There's a gravity to the interactions we have, even when our head is somewhere else. There's like 4 fires that are going on that you got to get to, and then but you those moments matter, and so I really like that you mentioned that and brought that up. One thing as we were setting this up and talking about, I know that a priority for you is with your students soft skill development and kind of I guess making aware of those post-secondary options for kids, because there's a lot of options that are post-secondary. It's not just college or whatever. So I was going to have you speak to that a little bit and just what that looks like in your school as far as soft skill development with kids.
Well, I'll tell you, there's 2 different things. One, we'll talk about with some of the soft skill stuff. One of the things that we're really focusing on, we're really implementing out full circle this year is where we're calling it Trojans Together. But we have the ability, we're a K-12 building, as I told you. So not everybody has that ability to do some of the things we're going to do. So we're basically doing a one-to-one mentoring program this year for every single kid in our school. And what I mean by that is, well, I'm sorry, not kindergarten. They got enough stuff figuring out the routine of kindergarten. But once they get to first grade's basically matched up with a 7th grader, and then you kind of continue on until you get to 6th grade and seniors. And they're just matched off kind of a one-to-one. Obviously, sometimes numbers don't match up and you're 2-to-1 or whatever else. But what we want to do is create some sort of another buddy in the school so they got someone to talk to. And then what they do now is once a month, they're going to basically teach a character lesson over some sort of whatever the character strong word of the month is or whatever else. So say it's respect or whatever the case may be. So our teachers took a day out of PD to not only set up these pairs in these groups, but also to create the lessons. And so one day throughout the week, the kids kind of learn those from the secondary teachers about here's what you're going to teach them, here's how you're going to go about it, here's the interactions here. It's all scripted kind of form so they feel comfortable. And then the next week they kind of meet with their little buddy and they do that. So, and it's kind of structured. Again, the building basically, for all intents and purposes, shuts down for about 40 minutes once a month because that's what everybody's doing at the same time. So I think that's really, really important as far as something not everybody can do, because we don't have to get a bus and rent and go out into the elementary school. We're here. They're here already. And I think it's important, because sometimes when it comes to some of those soft skills, kids, I feel like we talk to them too much. And we talk at them instead of talk to them, I guess is the best way to say. Is we're delivering these lessons that they've heard now for 12 years about what respect is and so on and so forth. Then at some point, it's time for us to stop talking to them and have them show us what it is. And I think when you give them that leadership opportunity, I'm a firm believer that every kid is going to be a good leader. And I had a lot of teachers that were like, well, what about this kid? He really struggles with, he doesn't respect his teachers. He doesn't respect, and all these other ones. But it's different when you're put in that leadership role, when you have that thrust upon you that this kid's looking up to you. You are now that person. We're also lucky. I'm not going to lie. We have great kids. We really do. It makes your job really, really easy when you got good kids. But I also feel like they rise to the challenge. They really do. And they see that, this isn't something for me to mess around with, because I got another little kid who's looking up to me, and they take that responsibility. So that's been a really cool thing we do in regards to some of our soft skills. The other thing since I got here is we've really been a big focus on, when I first came, they're very, very proud of the fact of the number of college hours that we teach within our building, which is amazing. I mean, for a small, 2A football, 3A, every other sports school, we offer I think it's 68 credit hours taught by our faculty for college credit. I mean, that's pretty impressive for a small school. Wow. But the thing about it is we had a lot of kids, when you wouldn't have a clear IPS, they were walking out of here with a lot of college hours, but they had no clue what they wanted to do. So we've really tried to focus more about getting them figured out what they exactly want to do, putting more of an emphasis on kids going to, we have a local technical college, obviously with the Senate bill, you can get all that free. So we send a lot of kids over to the technical school for half a day where they can learn their trade. We also, for those kids, because you have some kids that don't even want to do that. They want to go right out in the workforce. We have several local businesses that we set up internships, paid internships through the school day, where kids will go out for half a day and work there, and they'll come back here their senior year and take half a day of classes. And that's developed into careers for two of our kids last year, who in 2 or 3 years are going to be making more than me, but that's okay. I wouldn't want their job, and they wouldn't want mine, but it works for them. And that's what we really try to focus on, is doing what's right for whatever that kid is, and trying to meet them where they're at.
Yeah, I really, really love that. And I feel like I don't know if the shift or a shift is the right way to say it, but I feel like maybe early in my educational career, a lot of focus was on college, and appropriately so. But college is not the only option, and it's not for everybody. Just like you said, whether it's a technical school or straight into the workforce, I love putting that in front of students and emphasizing that it's not. There's not just one way forward, because really a really not very positive way forward is to get into college and get into a lot of student loan debt, and you end up like, I don't even want to do this, and then you're stuck, and then you got and so being able to explore these things in high school and get a taste of it, and maybe make some decisions one way or the other, so positive. And like you said, a lot of them get into professions that they start bankrolling pretty quick and doing really, really well. So,
I always tell the kids, I really want, and I tell parents this too, and they kind of think I'm crazy, but it kind of goes back to the same thing I talk about with teachers. High school, it's cheap to fail. That's the best way I say it. Take a college class if you don't know if you're what you want to do, and then if you fail a college class, guess what? It costs, for us, it's $50 a credit hour. It costs $150 to know that college is not for you, instead of spending $20,000 for your first year and figuring out it wasn't for you. And same way with, I tell them, internships. Try an internship. If it doesn't work out, that's not going on your resume, instead of having to put, I worked at this job for 2 weeks and I hated it. Try these things. It's easy. It's cheap to fail in high school, as opposed to when we get in the real world where it's a little harder.
Yeah, usually it's in a discipline area, but I tell students all the time here at the middle school, you're at a great age to learn a lesson, and because if you fast forward 10 years and you do the same thing, that could be a whole heap of trouble. It's the same thing with school. Being in high school, it's a great time to learn that, you know what, actually being a vet isn't what I want to do, because you go to go off to the university and figure that out. You're 2 years in and thousands of dollars later, So, no, I love that.
Dead on, dead on. And like, I love how you talked about the discipline thing, because it's so funny. Because I mean, as I tell almost every single parent when they, are so upset that their kid got in trouble, I'm like, I mean, kids are going to make mistakes. If kids didn't make a mistake, me and you wouldn't have jobs, because there wouldn't be a need for us. You know what I mean? So kids are going to make a mistake. It's all about how we want to respond afterwards. That's
Right.
the lesson. Is they're going to screw up. I screwed up. I mean, a lot. I still screw up. But
And that kind of goes back to, I love that you said Trojans Together, that one-on-one mentoring, and I can imagine, you said you had some, staff might say, well, what about this student or this? You put a student in that position of leadership, like you said. I think it's amazing what kids can do, and a lot of times I see it. We create leadership groups, and you're kind of part of a group, and it's easy to kind of get lost, even if you're in a leadership group. That one-on-one, that puts you like you're in the hot seat, and
Yep.
what a great. It's productive discomfort, I'm sure, for a lot of the kids, to be in that leadership role, and you're one-on-one, and you've got this younger student who's looking up to you now. And those younger kids will always remember who their mentor is.
absolutely.
I love that. You mentioned earlier, you referenced you have a little one in the building, and I wanted to just kind of get to that. I think when I talk with people who are interested in being a principal or getting into administration, it often comes up about that work-life balance, and either they're starting a family or they have a young family or whatever. Talk about how you balance the role. It's a demanding job, but also being that role of being a dad as well.
Well, it's just like anything. I learned early on. I guess the best way to say it is, I was a coach, pretty successful coach, and at one point I was getting kind of recruited to another school, and I was ready to take that job. I really was. And I remember I had like 2 or 3 kids just bawling, crying, like, you can't leave, you can't leave. And so, I always kind of chose. I think I kind of dedicated too much to my students. And I know that sounds crazy to be here, because you give a life to education and people are like, you can't, give too much, but you can. And I chose to stay. And 2 years later, when that kid graduates, we don't really talk to each other anymore. You know what I mean? Like, occasionally you see him, but you think about that, like, man, I completely changed my path because, these students really, quote unquote, needed me. And at that point, I realized, like, I think my focus and my priorities are wrong. And so I really kind of refocused on making sure I was going to be there, when my family needed me, because they're going to be the ones that are here long after. When I finally get done in education and I retire, my family's going to be the one that's still around for many more years. So we're lucky we make it an incredible impact every single day. But we also have to remember it is a job. It's a job that makes a huge impact, but it is still a job. So we've got to make sure we make time for the people that are always going to be there for us. Because sometimes we can feel used, I think, in this position. Because so many people are coming at us in different ways. And I don't want that to come across negative, because I love what I do. I really do. But I do think it's very important to make sure. And I tell my staff, too. I was like, you're only going to be successful if you're happy. If you're miserable, and that comes from whether you're for me, if my wife is yelling at me because I'm not going to my kids' stuff or whatever else, and I'm bringing that with me the next day to school, as opposed to if I left 30 minutes later, earlier than I, wanted to or whatever else, and I was able to take my daughter to gymnastics practice, my family's a lot happier with me, and I'm a lot happier coming back the next day. And I tease everybody. I'm like, that paperwork that's on my desk, it'll be there tomorrow. So there's no sense I need. Check it off.
Yeah, no, that is for sure. There's always it'll be waiting for you tomorrow.
Yes.
And what advice would you give that new administrator that maybe you would mentor on anything? I guess as a prospective administrator.
I guess the best way to say it is find what makes you happy and then embrace those things. I guess is the best way to say it. If truly, and what I mean by that is what makes you happy long term. I think I got sucked in really early on as a young teacher and a coach that, my entire life was wrapped up in those students. And all of my relationships was, either the students or the students' parents and things like that. And then you realize, like, after they move on and they graduate, you're kind of sitting around like, man, I've not done a good job of, like, creating relationships with my actual peers. Like I've been so driven to, to coach and to win, and that was everything that it was, that I didn't I didn't create relationships even with my assistant coaches and things like that. That just wasn't, that was not part of, those relationships were not part of the plan, because as silly as it was, I was so driven by winning, that didn't really necessarily help me win. So kind of making sure you're making time for those other relationships, because there are going to be days when you're going to need that person. You're going to need that person that's in, my assistant principal. I need that guy regularly. So it's incredibly beneficial to make sure I have that relationship with them. And I mean, when I mean that by that is, outside of work hours, we'll make sure we'll go try and grab something to eat or try and go do something, because you want to have those relationships that, have those people by your side, that even after he goes to another school or I go to another school, we still have that relationship of someone I can reach out to, I can talk to. So finding those people, building those relationships of those people around you.
Yeah, no, I love that. Very, very real take there, and just so authentic. I agree. I think I have the best job in the district. I love what I do. I love being a building principal. It's a grind, though.
Yes.
It can be a grind, and it can be a roller coaster of things that, it could be a slow week for whatever reason. All of a sudden, you have a month's worth of issues that pop up in 2 days, and
Yes.
that's just kind of the way it goes. But to take care of your people and to be there for your people, really, I really appreciate that viewpoint and for sharing that out here on this podcast. And before we go here, just 2 quick hitters there. KPA, this is a KPA podcast. What has the KPA meant to you over your time as an administrator?
Well, it's been great. The big resource, obviously, that I use, the KPA, is, the USA conference is the one that, I probably get out to most. I don't really necessarily get out to the KPA conference during the school year as much, because to be honest with you, especially in a small school, you always just feel so guilty of being away from school, even if it's a day or two. When it's the summer, you're like, yeah, I can get away from the office or whatever else. So USA has definitely been my outlet of that, and that's been huge. And not only that, just having that resource of, as I talked about, there's a lot of people that are in the trenches every single day that there's nothing that sometimes can make you feel better than when you hear about somebody else that might have just had a worse day than you even. So you can be there not only for an ear, to be like, man, I'm sorry that happened to you. But then after you hang up that call, you're like, whew, my day was not as bad as that guy's day or that girl's day or whatever the case may be. So again, building those relationships with your other principals, I think, is so, so important. Whether it's just a local principal down the road or someone completely across the state. Like I talked with Don. I mean, Don's on the other side of the state from me, but I'll still try and give him a call and give him some positive things every once in a while, because I know sometimes it's exhausting for a guy like that who we just look at and we expect him to constantly give the positivity to everybody, but at some point he's got to get it back too. So seeing that and making sure we're giving positive back to people.
Yeah, no, that's great. And since you brought it up, KPA conference is November 5th and 6th, I believe, this year. And certainly I'll put a plug in for it. It is a great conference. You're right. It can feel kind of guilty at times to get away from the building. That conference in particular, I was at USA as well. Love that. It's a great conference. KPA, a little smaller of a conference, but just pinpointed on the principal, and I love it. And it's just a great opportunity, like you said, to share. I hate to say misery loves company, but I know what that saying means. Yeah. I know how that, what that means there when you have a rough time. But certainly we're in a position of, we need each other, because sometimes we need to be the ear and sometimes we need to be able to share. But hey, real quick here before the day gets started, brag on your people out there in Southeast Saline.
Well, I tell you what, we just have phenomenal kids. I mean, we're very, very successful in pretty much everything we do, I guess is the best way to say. We talked a little bit about, I think we've hung a state championship banner every single year since 2018. So not very many schools can say that, they're not only they just successful, but successful multitude. We're cross-country teams, our track teams, our football teams, Scholars Bowl team. I mean, it's not just athletics. It's academics. It's really everything. And I think it goes back to, It's not me, I promise you that. It's we have great kids and we have phenomenal staff, and we have staff that have been here. There's little turnover because they really like it here. Like I told you, we have a teacher right now who is in his 41st year all here. We had one that retired last year who very, very upset about retiring, but I think he spent 45 years in our district.
Wow.
So and the year before that we lost someone who he was like high 30s in our district, and he still comes back and does our plays. But we have phenomenal leaders. We have phenomenal teachers in our district. We have great parents and kids. They work hard. They do what's right, and they just want to get better in everything they do. And I think that starts at the top from our superintendent and our school board, goes down in our district or our building leaderships, and then obviously the people that really are doing the grunt work, and that's the teachers. They're the ones that are putting in the hours and putting in the work. I might be the face or the focal point that people look at, but I'm not the one that's I'm not pulling the sled. I'm just directing it. I'm driving it. They're the one pulling it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, and loved hearing about your school and everything that's going on out there. And I got to say, Don really pumped you up, and he's like, oh, yeah, Rick, you got to have him on. And I remember you talked about his social media presence, which is incredible. But I saw,
Yes.
I think that was the first time I saw like a picture of you was you in a boa with Don. And so I saw that, and I'm like, I didn't end up having to wear the boa. I somehow avoided it that whole morning, but a lot of my staff did. So
Yes.
it was good times. Well, hey, I know the day's going to be getting started for you soon, so I really appreciate your time, and looking forward to running into you, whether it's KPA or USA or somewhere else. But good luck to you on this school year ahead.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you for all you do of getting positive words out and pumping up educators, because we can't have enough of that. So I appreciate what you do, Rick.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
Take care.
Check the notes section for more information on this episode and to learn more about the KPA and its mission to develop and support all principals through optimized learning, collaborative leadership, networking, and service. Be sure to check back in for our next episode and spread the word about cool coffee with Kansas Principals. Catch you next time.